Good morning, everyone. My name is Rosemarie Savino. I am Chief Operating Officer of AEG, the Association for Enterprise Growth. And thank you for joining us on this month's LinkedIn Live Member Spotlight. AEG is the premier membership organization for professional service practitioners, and we curate communities of vetted, highly successful professionals whose target clients are mid-market sized companies. And I am thrilled today to be able to spotlight one of our members, Dustin Siggins. Dustin.
Hey, thanks for having me. How are you?
Good morning. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and your company before we get into the meat of today's discussion.
Well, I'm wide awake because I'm at Goose Cup in Leesburg having a maple latte, which tastes amazing, and somebody else paid for it, so I'm very happy this morning. So my name is Dustin Siggins. I founded Proven Media Solutions, and what we do is we help people get in the press to build trust with target audiences and accelerate their marketing outcomes.
That's awesome. And I think we don't talk enough about, I'll just use the general catchphrase of PR, but really how people can utilize different types of media really to get their messaging across. So
Sure.
I want to pick on that a little bit today with you, Dustin. One of the things that we like to help our folks who are watching and listening understand is some of the trends that are going on that you see from your perspective, and how you help your clients with those trends, so that folks who are in similar situations know how you can help them.
Sure. So a huge trend in the last 10 years, and everything from a simple mistake. There's some fast food companies have been under pressure recently for price increases, to major mistakes like, you have an auto manufacturer or an airline manufacturer that's having issues that are risking lives. Everything from the virtually insignificant, except to somebody's pocketbook today, all the way to life-threatening, is the trend of attack online. Everyone is vulnerable today because of the low barriers to entry to someone claiming that you're doing something illegal, unethical, or immoral. And they have automatic sympathy because that's where virility happens and a lot of news stories are made. And so what we recommend to clients is getting in the press. PR helps you build that trust with your core audience and other stakeholders. So your purchasing audience, but government regulators, investors, community leaders, etc., industry leaders. So when you are attacked, you've built that reservoir of trust. And so you might take a little bit of damage, but nobody's going to believe, just because somebody complains, no one's going to believe that Amazon is going to stop delivering things relatively on time, or that Chick-fil-A and Starbucks are going to start delivering bad product, because they have such strong reputation. They've built that core audience's trust, even beyond the core purchasers. They've had those stakeholder trusts. And so what we advise people to do is get in the press. Not only can help get people into your sales funnel, but it builds that weak link and strong link trust throughout your stakeholder engagement process. And on the flip side, when you are attacked, there's a fast food company recently that they were attacked for high prices. I don't think they even responded because they understood that stakeholder trust was really high. Someone's post is going to go viral for a day, and then everyone moves on.
So,
go ahead.
Let me ask you a question related to that, because I think there's a lot of diamonds in there, right? So I want to pick out a couple things. This notion of building a reservoir of trust before something happens is really important. It's why some of the larger companies spend money to build their brand, but any such company should be looking to build that reservoir of trust, is what I'm hearing from what you're seeing, right? So really building that up in advance. And then as you're going through some sort of crisis, and a crisis may not seem big to some people, like if you don't fly on airplanes, you may not think an airplane crisis is big. But if you depend on a certain company to provide you with a certain product, and that changes, that's big to you, right?
And in today's,
here's my question.
Oh,
Yeah. So
sorry.
here's my question. Is it better to navigate those situations with someone who knows kind of how to fish in those waters? Or can you just rely on your sort of in-house social media manager? Like from the trend you're
Sure.
seeing, how important and impactful is it to have somebody who really knows what's going on out there to give you advice and guidance?
Don't over rely on a vendor because
Mhm,
there are, in my case, I'm PR, hammer and nail. Everything requires PR thought processes. If you go to an accountant during tax season, they're always going to have a hammer and nail, or they're going to be predisposed to having a hammer and nail solution. I think what you do ahead of time is prepare off the shelf responses to any one of 10 or 12 or 20, depending on your industry,
mhm,
likely crises. And that
mhm,
response be everything from run silent all the way to the CEO doing CNBC appearances and congressional hearings, depending upon what you do. And so I think having off the shelf initial responses, one, two, where possible, where it makes sense, have technological solutions to stay in touch. There was a phone company a couple of weeks back. They got, I think they had 70,000 customers have cell phone outages across the country. 70,000 in a country this big is not that big of a deal. But to those 70,000 people, it might have been emergencies, missed work meetings, or in one case, a friend of mine, she had to scramble to make appointments for her kids who had broken bones, follow-up appointments. So, so you have off-the-shelf solution, you have constant communication. So people can see that you care, they can know what's happening forward, etc. And then third, this is where you might bring in the experts during the crisis, is okay, what do we do over the next 2 to 4 weeks? Do we let it just die or not? And that's why I say don't over rely on an outside vendor during, but prepare ahead of time for the off the shelf and technological and communication components in say the first, 72 to 168 hours.
perfect. So now let's shift our gaze a little bit from
Sure.
crisis to building your brand. That relies, I think, a lot on consistent communication, which you just mentioned, but
Yep.
also thought leadership in your space. Can you talk a little bit more about what you're seeing or
Sure.
think are good practices for people who want to develop that thought leadership and where they should be working through that so that they can build that brand awareness?
Sure. And thought leadership is a broad term. Let me define it
Yeah.
as using your expertise, knowledge, data, etc., to put your thoughts out there in the world so that they make a difference.
Hmm.
Because a lot of thought leadership, again, low barriers to entry today online, there's not a whole lot of thought and not a whole lot of leadership a lot of the time. And yet, those who know more often can't break through because there's just such a plethora, it's a saturation of the marketplace.
Hmm.
I think the best thought leadership for company leaders, whether they're leading a department or they are the CEO, starts with what is the goal? Is the goal because you're the CEO and you want to be seen as a thought leader in the industry? Because over the next 5 years, you want your company to rise? Or is it thought leadership because you want to talk about what your company does in a way that's not an advertisement? So once you define your goal, then it's really important to, if thought leadership makes sense, to talk about the things that nobody else is. And that can literally be during the pandemic. There was a lot of forward looking, talk processes and talking and current, crisis now. How do we handle it? All the way to 5 years from now. What is the trend line on commercial real estate?
Hmm.
That can be thought leadership in that way. The other way is you can be just countercultural. If everyone else is saying the economy is going down, pull your money out, maybe you're the financial advisor who says, actually keep your money in because you're going to lose a little bit now, but you're going to stay in the market. So when it goes back up over the next 12 years, you're going to make more money. So being counterintuitive or countercultural can be another way to add a new angle and therefore, be seen differently and be seen better in the marketplace.
So developing the strategy is very important, and then figuring out how to message and communicate through that strategy. Is that where someone with your expertise would be really helpful? For example, if I wanted to stand out in general media, versus my industry media versus,
Sure.
in my particular industry vertical versus
Yep.
speaking to the
Mhm.
customers who might want my services?
So thought leadership is not, depending what you're talking about, isn't likely to drive a sale immediately,
Mhm,
except under rare circumstances. It should be definitely part of your overall strategy. So you get placed in a respected industry trade pub, and then you're putting it on your social media, your website, your newsletter, a handout to an investor, or at a conference.
mhm,
When you're, again, it don't always rely on a vendor, because a vendor might say, we can get you placed here, and you're not an expert. It sounds good. Just like it sounds good when a mechanic says they're going to do something, or someone says you need a new HVAC system. You're like, yeah, I don't want my kids to, die of heat exhaustion this summer, so I'm gonna, buy a new HVAC for 12 grand when it could have been a $1,500 replacement. I would say bring the outside experts in when when you figure out the approach you want and the goals you want from that approach, and bring them in to achieve those goals for the most part. And yeah, if they see something that you don't, go with it. But I would have a strategy in place ahead of time and goals that you want to achieve, so that you're bringing that expert in for the really narrow offering, rather than creating the opportunity to be taken advantage of or be sidetracked from your goal of more revenue and greater profit.
That's awesome. Awesome insights, Dustin. Thank you for walking us through those. I'm not going to
Yeah.
call them trends, but those are two really big parts of having your company well represented in the marketplace. And going back to your early statement, right? Building that reservoir of trust in case there's a crisis and then handling that
Well,
crisis.
but there's always going to be a crisis, and that's the thing. If I knew when you were going to have a crisis, I wouldn't have to have a company. I could go to Vegas and just gamble and win all the time. At the end of the day, you're always going to have a crisis. I knew a home services provider. OSHA was coming after him, so he had them write a letter. He has his lawyer write a letter to OSHA saying back off, and he
Mm-hmm,
did a couple of radio appearances on worksite safety.
mm-hmm,
So not only did that handle the legal part,
mm-hmm,
we had also handled the public relations and customer trust, community trust part. And he
mm-hmm.
was able to take a really boring topic like worksite safety and make it really interesting. So there
Oh,
was also a brand boost from a relatability standpoint. So
mm-hmm,
every company is going to have crisis
mm-hmm.
on every level. Technology advances and you think you're behind.
Right.
So, I think AEG, for example, business works at the speed of trust, at the speed of handshakes. In the era of AI, that's almost counterintuitive, especially
Mm-hmm,
post. And so there's always opportunities to take advantage of what could be seen as a crisis,
mm-hmm.
and turn that into long-term trust. So again, the long-term trend is assume you're going to be under crisis and under attack at some point, and have off-the-shelf solutions ready to go.
Awesome. So, for those of you who are listening or watching this after the recording is completed, feel free to reach out to Dustin to talk with him a little bit more about how you prep and move forward in that direction. And Dustin, let's wrap up now for everybody. How about the obligatory 30 ad for AEG? You are a great member. You've been a member for a while. What is it about AEG that prompted you to join us and that keeps you in the community?
Sure. It's really hard to get in front of well-established, experienced business owners, whether they're still in business, they were senior executive and launched their own business, or they've retired, but they're still investing, they're still out there, they're still engaged. It's hard to get in front of those people. Um, they get a lot of phone calls, emails, social media, LinkedIn messages that are really garbage. And so joining AEG allowed me to have guaranteed access, that then, it's what you do with that access from there.
Awesome. So again, AEG is a membership organization. We are invitation only. So Dustin passed our very high bar. Folks who are excellent at what they do and who are fantastic human beings. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. And thanks, Dustin.
Thank you. Have a good one.